There are global issues in every area of the syllabus. In human resource management, really what we're talking about is outsourcing labor globally, so getting people overseas to do the work. Now, there are some risk areas here that you need to understand before you just say, oh, yeah, we'll get overseas to do it, we'll outsource it. And the three risk areas in the syllabus are the costs, the skills, and the supply of that global labor. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages in all of these areas, all of these risky areas. So you do need to weigh them up, but you just need to know that even though there might be some obvious advantages, there are also the disadvantages that you need to look at. So when it comes to costs, you really need to understand just how much cheaper it is to get people overseas to do the work. It is significantly cheaper. It is so much cheaper. So that's why, even though you've got the disadvantages of maybe it's going to be lower quality, maybe you're going to get some bad publicity for moving labor overseas, so not being socially responsible as a corporation. Even though you've got those disadvantages, most businesses have chosen that they're just going to, outsource labor as much as possible to, let's say India or Indonesia or, wherever. So there has to be something there, and the something is the cost. It is so much cheaper. If you can pay $3 an hour instead of $25 an hour, obviously, even though it might be slightly lower quality and you might get some bad, press like, Pacific Brands did for moving the bonds work overseas, it really doesn't matter. In the end, the significant savings will often trump the disadvantages. When it comes to skills, there are going to be more workers available if you go global, and they're going to have a greater range of skills because there's more of them. And you're also going to have overseas workers that have the latest knowledge and techniques. And now I'm not talking about globally outsourcing to like third world countries here. We might be talking about, all right, if we need a higher management position, we're going to advertise in the UK, and we're going to advertise across Europe, and we're going to try and find someone, or we're going to go to North America, Canada. It might be that you are getting someone from overseas who may be from an English-speaking country, and they might have the latest knowledge and techniques, especially if they've already been running a company. And you go over there and try to win them over and bring them to Australia. The disadvantages are that the skill levels are not guaranteed. So especially when it comes to qualifications, so university degrees or recognized qualifications, unless you've got a globally recognized qualification, and there aren't really a lot of those, and especially if you're from a developing country, your skill levels might be good, but they're not going to be guaranteed by Australian standards. And so you always hear stories of people coming from overseas, and it's like, oh, I was a doctor overseas, and now I mop the floor, because they didn't meet the Australian standards, not because they weren't good enough, but because legally they didn't actually comply with the requirements. There's also the issue of supply. Now, supply is much greater when you go global. So you have greater supply, and it's going to be cheaper, because there's more of them, and you're going to have a lot greater choice. But you might only need fewer, but more highly qualified Australian workers, rather than getting a whole bunch of lower skilled workers in other countries and paying them a little bit. If you just took that money and you hired, 3 Australians, they might have had the skills to do a better job than, 30, people overseas. So you might only need those fewer people, and then it's not going to be worth it. So if you need really high quality work, and you need it to be guaranteed, and you need it to meet Australian standards, you might actually just decide, I'm not going to outsource this. It's not just sewing socks or underwear or something like that. It's actually more complicated than that. So we're going to hire just a handful, but very, very highly qualified Australian workers to do that job. So those are the global issues that you would need to look at, and you need to look for hints, say in the Section 3, the business report. You need to look for hints that have to do with the business wants to move global, and you look for any question that has anything to do with human resources. What are the issues that they would need to think about in when going global when it comes to human resources? But they might just say global human resources, operations, and marketing, right? They might have 3 different areas, so you need to be ready for that as well.